I'm Philip Jareggi, and this is Supreme Thoughts, where we talk about the Supreme Court from a different perspective, hopefully a biblical perspective, a supreme perspective. So thanks for taking a few minutes. I want to tell you guys about a really important gathering that's coming up this Thursday, and I want to ask you to pray for it because it's a gathering of what is called it's a summit of the Supreme Court Review Committee. It's hosted by American Family Association Action, Conservative Partnership Institute, and Judicial Action Group. And when we talk about the summit of the Supreme Court Review Committee, that's not a corporation. It's not a separate organization. It's just an ad hoc affiliation of organizations who work together to research future prospects for the U.S. Supreme Court. There's a lot of talk about a vacancy coming up this summer, within this month even, perhaps. And so it's good that we go ahead and do research and we look at prospects for the Supreme Court. And so that's one of the reasons, well, it is the reason that this group is gathering, is to be prepared. The meeting is on June 11th, but if a vacancy occurs, it would probably be about the 1st of July or so. But to be prepared for that. And so I'll tell you about a number of organizations that are gathering and people who are speaking. For example, Senator Mike Lee will be there, the U.S. Senator from Utah, who's a great constitutionalist on the Senate Judiciary Committee, which, by the way, if there's a nominee, all federal court nominees go through the Senate Judiciary Committee. So the senators that serve on that committee, like Senator Lee, they are particularly important. But Senator Lee is going to speak, which, God bless him, that's a real honor to have him come and share his thoughts about the Supreme Court and a possible vacancy. Jim DeMint will be there and speak. He's a former senator from South Carolina. He is the chairman of the Conservative Partnership Institute, which CPI is one of the co-hosts, the three co-hosts of this meeting. Then Walker Wildman, who is CEO of AFA Action. I have the great honor of working for Walker at AFA. I was going to say with Walker. He's my boss there. So we'll say I work for Walker at AFA Action, but he's a great leader. He'll be there. He's also, of course, one of the co-sponsors, and I, along with them, in the hat that I get to wear at AFA Action. Of course, I also wear my hat at JAG. Then others are Mike Berry. Mike is the executive director of External Affairs and senior counsel at First Liberty. Chris Ullman, who's president of Eagle Forum. Mario Diaz, who is general counsel at Concerned Women for America. Dr. Tim Clinton, who is president and executive director who is president of the American Association of Christian Counselors. He's also one of the 4 board members of the National Faith Advisory Board to the White House. He has substantial influence with the White House and with the faith community. Dr. Tim Clinton will be there, and he'll open us in prayer with a blessing on the meeting. And then also, there will be a real all-star panel of people with substantial influence on judicial nominations and experience. Carrie Severino, who's with Judicial Crisis Network. Gene Hamilton, who's president of America First Legal. That's a great organization that was founded by Gene Hamilton and Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller, who's in the White House now, of course. Also, Rob Luther III, who is founder of Constitutional Solutions, which, as I understand it, has a good bit of influence on judicial nominations. Rob worked in the White House counsel's office during President Trump's first term, so he knows a lot about that process, about this process. Danielle Cutrona, who worked for Senator Jeff Sessions on Judiciary Committee and then also worked for him when he was the Attorney General. And then Michael Thielen. Michael is president and executive director of the Republican National Lawyers Association, which has a ton of influence on judicial nominations, and they'll all be speaking about this topic. And then I'll have the honor of facilitating a session talking about green list prospects for the U.S. Supreme Court. So Guys, I want to ask you to pray for this meeting. You'll be getting this video, Lord willing, the beginning of the week. This meeting occurs on Thursday, June 11th. And so I want to ask you, let this be both informative, but also an alert for prayer. I want to ask you to pray for these people by name that I've listed, and pray for the meeting, that God will really use it to impact this process. No one has announced their retirement. I've talked to people who work in the Senate, and they don't know, but when I ask them, the estimates that I get back, they think it's more likely than not, or probable, that there would be a vacancy. And some think it could be Justice Alito. Some say Thomas, although I think that's probably the one that's least talked about. But then also even potentially Chief Justice John Roberts might be someone who would retire. And then there are other members of the court as well. You just never know. But we do need to be prepared. It's not enough to say, well, there's not a vacancy or there hasn't been one announced, and so we don't need to focus on that until there's a vacancy. No, we need to be prepared in advance. And so that's why we're doing this. And I do want to thank Walker Wildman, his leadership with this, also Senator DeMint and William Smith at CPI for their leadership. They're hosting this event. And so, but do be praying for it, that God's will be done, okay? And then we'll probably have a report for you after that gathering on how it went. And a lot of what is said will probably be off the record. Some people may allow for it to be quoted, but I can talk about what my thoughts are about the topics that are discussed. So thank you. Be praying for us. And if you would too, please do like and subscribe to this video. When you subscribe, it doesn't cost you anything, but it does help us. And it'll also let you know when future videos on this topic of the Supreme Court, a possible vacancy on the court, when those come out, you'll be notified. So thanks a ton. I appreciate you.